RJ?
Yeah.
Why are you
RJ.
special?
I am definitely not. Yeah. I feel very lucky and honored to work in the spaces I work, to have met the people I've met. I feel like I'm surrounded by special people. So I don't not.
I'm Herb Thompson, a Green Beret and resolutionist.
And I'm Corey Thompson, Herb's less hairy half and branding expert.
Our guests come from various backgrounds, but one thing is true. They are special. We figured you would say that, but to me, you might be the most interesting man in the world. Yeah. Green Beret, physician's assistant, PJ or pararescue jumper, Hollywood stunts coordinator doing the stunts, SpaceX astronaut-recovery, co-founder of Brigands Apparel, co-founder of Four Branches Bourbon, and we probably left out some stuff, man. So I think the audience is going to think you're pretty special once they hear from you.
No, I appreciate it. So I do have a couple of disclaimers.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
Yeah.
While I went to PA school, right now, currently, I'm not credentialed in any U.S. hospital. I'm not practicing medicine. Somehow medicine is applied in all the spaces I'm in, but it's always point of injury or remote medicine. And I have a lot of friends in the PA career field, and they just crush it. I freaking love PAs.
Let's start with when you were younger. Was there anything like in your youth that drove you to accomplish so much, do all this success?
I think it was a combination of a couple things, but I had a fighter pilot for a dad, and we moved a lot. So he was a fighter pilot in the Air Force. And I had a tough Texas mom, and I have an awesome brother named Quinn. And so we were a very tight family, and we moved around everywhere from, deep, dark Alabama to Europe, to, and when I say Europe, I mean before the wall fell Europe.
Yeah, like
early to mid 80s, like Cold War, full on. And it was a really cool piece of history to grow up with as a teenager, especially. My dad imparted on my brother and I, you can do anything you put your mind to. He didn't really go past that. So I kind of, choose your own adventure. I kind of figured out what he meant as I grew up in different crossroads here and there. Hey, if you're curious and want to go check something out, don't think it's below you. Don't think it's above you either. Stay humble, but you can do anything you put your mind to. And so that was the beginning of a foundation that led me to a lot of different places.
As you grew up, spending time in Europe, did your parents allow you to have freedom to do some traveling, you and your brother on your own?
Yeah, when I was growing up, there were no cell phones. There were no mobile phones. There was nothing. It was landlines, and so there was a cord to a wall that connected to a phone. So I grew up in a different time where you kind of came in when the light, it got dark, or you heard your mom or dad screaming, dinner time, and then you knew that was time to come home. We just stayed outside, and we'd walk off base into town, into Bitburg, Germany, and walk around. And I was on a German soccer team, but I had to go to American high school and played a lot of sports to avoid academics. And I was not much of a book person at the time. My dad especially, they were both really good about travel. They're like, we're in Europe. We actually waited until you guys were old enough to remember it in your later years.
Smart.
And we're going to enjoy this. And so we'd come home Friday, and there would be bags. And so my mom and dad would be packed. And so we'd get home from, wrestling practice or whatever it was, right before dinner time. And they're like, are we going on a trip? And so it was a couple times a month, my parents would surprise us on Friday. We'd get on a train and wake up in a different country, and and it was like, where are we going, Dad? And we're like, I don't know. We're gonna have to wait. We're gonna have to wake up and find out. And they always had a good plan, and they showed us all over Europe, and also being at an American high school when you're playing sports, whether it's and for me, I didn't do the football, basketball, whatever. I was short, and I hit puberty way, way late. I was cross country, wrestling, and soccer. So we traveled to compete against other bases, which means we went everywhere from Spain to Berlin to, it was a really cool experience.
Europe, then.
Yeah.
In high
literally.
school to go play.
This is fascinating to me because I think it makes sense seeing all that you accomplish now and seeing all that you travel now. It's almost like it was ingrained into you at an early age to have this sense of adventure.
For sure. My parents were extremely adventurous.
That's
awesome. I was, like I said, I felt very lucky to be raised in the family I was raised in.
I'm going to flip it to your military career.
Oh, boy.
You're in the Green Beret, which I think is kind of cool. And you're a Special Forces medic. What was it like working as a Green Beret and a Special Forces medic?
Another disclaimer. So for everyone out there, when you're a Green Beret, there's different ways that you can serve that community and that career field. I've always been Guard and Reserve. I've laced the Guard and Reserve through every facet of my life. Now I've been on loan to 5th Group with your boys at ODA 535. Shout out to the scuba team, guys like Randy and Travis and Danny, and it was an iconic team, and I felt lucky to be there. And then 7th Group, I was on loan to them a lot. Had a great time, but I've always been Guard and Reserve, and that has given me a freedom to go to all these other spaces and to take that foundation, which Special Operations gives you. I don't think even military guys appreciate that foundation, because you can literally do anything you want after that. So just having that mentality of never quit and do whatever it takes, get the job done, keep your sense of humor. So, yeah.
No, I think it's cool, the Guard and Reserve, because you get to work with a lot of groups, a lot of different entities where, with me, just in 5th Group, it's like 5th Group. And once in a while you work with someone else, but you're kind of siloed in what you see. So I actually think it's cool, the Guard and Reserve, and have a bunch of buddies like you that have done that.
Well, we were talking earlier, and I thought it was really cool that you got to work with a lot of different organizations, whether it was OGA or some of the Tier 1 units. Like your ODA was on the road a lot, and that's really cool.
For the non-military folks out there, that's probably confusing. It just meant we got a lot more fun away from mom and dad, like the bosses, And we got
away from the flagpole.
Yeah, away from the flagpole and the bosses, and we got to hang out and do some cool stuff. Being a Green Beret is awesome. Obviously, it's my background, working with Indigenous forces. A lot goes into that, and it's no easy feat, but it's not the hardest thing in the world. I will say, though, the Air Force has pararescue. That is probably one of the most grueling pipelines there is. How did you go from, hey, I'm a Green Beret, but also you end up in being an Air Force PJ?
So I was contracting. So I was a direct contractor with other government agencies, and the intelligence community is huge, and it incorporates a lot of different organizations. And I was lucky to work on different ground and maritime activities and projects and stuff. And as a medic. So there was about 10 of us, and we were kind of a tight group. Like, I still keep in touch with most of those guys. We were all PA trained, and we all had a SOCOM background, and most of the guys were
Special Operations Command for those out there. But
yeah. So most of the guys had a Special Operations background, and we had a couple SEALs. Most of them were former Green Berets or Special Forces 18 Deltas that had gone to PA school. It was always forward operating bases, and always a lot of ground. A couple of us got to work with some of the water projects, which I felt lucky to do, and just had a blast. But at some point, being in 19th Group, they were like, RJ, you have to get out. Like, you can no longer be in that unit. You can't be in the military. Like, you've got to get out. We're not going to lose you for a year to 18 months. So I was like, okay, but they keep me more current than you guys do. Like, are you sure? They're like, oh, we're sure. Like, you're on a schedule, and we need to keep you on that schedule. And I was like, no, I like my schedule. So yeah, okay, let me figure this out. I really like the Guard, and I like having that one foot in the military. I'll figure this out. So I went to PSYOPs and Civil Affairs to see what their deployments were going to look like. And they were getting hit with a year plus. And so finally I was at a crash site in Colombia, and I was talking to a former 7th Group medic and another friend of mine, Mark De Pasquale. And we were at this crash site. I was telling that story, and they were like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, well, everyone's getting hit with a year plus. I guess I'm going to go home and get out. And one of the guys was like, you should go be a PJ. And I was like, I can't go on active duty and be a PJ. And like, they have Guard and Reserve. I was like, really? And they were like, yeah, and their deployments are crazy short. So you should at least look into it. I just happened to be doing a trip in Alaska, and we were flying through Anchorage, and I knew there was a like as soon as I went home, I hit the internet and looked for units that were Guard and Reserve. And I heard there was one in Anchorage, and they're an iconic PJ team. In fact, I was just on the phone with a full colonel, and there's not many full colonels in the pararescue career field, and he's one of them, a Spurt. And shout out to the Alaska team and Jeremy Diola and Roger Sparks and all the guys up there, Dan Warren. But I interviewed there first, and that's another funny story. But I ended up in the team in New York. When I was interviewing, I took one of their AFSOC PT tests, and then I kind of was facing like 5 of them, and they were firing questions at me. And then I had a bunch of questions too. So one of mine was, do you guys deploy to combat zones? And they all looked super uneasy, and they were like, yeah, if you're in this unit, eventually, you don't have to go on every deployment, but you are going to have to deploy. And I was like, well, how long is that? And they were like, yeah, you have to be gone at least 30 days. And I was like, and I at first I thought they were kidding. And I was like, okay, well, if it's not 30 days, what's the longest you can be deployed from this unit? And they said, well, some guys like to stay a lot longer. But we make them come home after 3 months. And I was like, where do I sign? This is awesome. So obviously they deploy longer now, but at the time, this was 2002 when I interviewed with them.
Oh, wow.
I signed in that day, and they were a freaking awesome team. And I still have a lot of friends up there and good memories. So I'm currently with the reserve team down at Patrick Space Force Base, which is still kind of weird to say Space Force Base, but Patrick's a really cool location just south of Cocoa Beach. We do a lot of rescues. We work with the space industry and do a lot of rescues, especially with the hurricanes, natural disasters, and then we deploy to combat zones occasionally.
This is why I think you're the most interesting man in the world. We're a few minutes into this. We've been to Colombia, Alaska, Florida. Maybe Iraq was thrown in there. We've talked about a crash site. But I mean, and we're just a couple minutes in. That's like just interesting. To someone who's not from the military or special operations, to understand like how difficult to be a Green Beret, but then how difficult and even more grueling it is to be a PJ. It's impressive. And I think you're the first person I met have done both. I've met a few and served with a couple that were SEALs and Green Berets. Mm-hmm. They had earned both, but I think you're the first one I've met that has done the Air Force Pararescue and Green Beret. And it's just, I don't think the audience can understand how difficult that is.
Well, I also for the audience, and I know there's going to be a lot of people that are interested in special operations that listen to this podcast. And one of my goals has always been, I don't want to dynamite in the lake and steal people from the SEAL community or the Green Beret. Like those potential candidates should go to those courses and be in those career fields. But what I do want to spread the word on is, if you're a high school kid thinking about special operations, you're going to gravitate towards SEAL or Green Beret, like one or the other, because they're the most well-known. But that third option, to be a PJ or a CCT, you get to work with both. Yeah. And I think it's really cool. And when you look at the pararescue career field, and I've heard SEALs say this on camera too, they think that's the hardest pipeline because it's not just a grueling and getting ready for combat dive operations, because that's arguably one of the hardest things that you do in special operations. But then intellectually and academically, you've got to go and be a National Registry paramedic, and that course is no joke. That's usually 2 to 3 years, and they jam that into 6 months, and you will or will not pass the National Registry exam, which is, any national exam for me is a nightmare. Like that's a really hard test, but like that one National Registry paramedic course, that's 41 college credit hours. Wow. Just that one course. Wow. And that's 6 months. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
And I think contracting on the outside, we always said at OGA, like there's the 3 things. And if you have 3 things on your resume, you almost can't not get the job. And one's sniper instructor, JTAC, or calling in bombs, talking to planes and bringing ordnance exactly where it needs to be delivered. Third one is paramedic or above. So if you're a medical guy, and if you have any one of those 3, chances are you can work wherever you want. But
and not to put down shooters, but like a lot of people can shoot. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of just straight shooters who go and do that. But yeah, when you're talking these advanced skills of the medical and the calling in airstrikes. Those are like advanced skills that you don't grow overnight. So yeah, heavily in demand.
I'm glad you're here because not just as a special operations spouse to come from that angle, but to have that objective, like, what are you guys talking about? And I want to know about this. Like
thank you.
That's an angle that we don't have. So your questions usually throw me off more than his because we kind of speak the same language.
Yeah, that's fair. You guys kind of have gotten habitually used to all the same lingo. That's what actually a moment ago I was thinking about crash site, and I was running through the possibilities of what I thought that meant and then what it probably actually meant. What is a crash site? I'll ask you that.
Yeah, so that particular crash site, that was in the spring of 2003. So that's before the Iraq War kicked off. The first bombs dropped. It would drop like a month plus later. So we were in Colombia, and a plane went down and crashed in the mountains of Colombia, and it was in FARC territory. I was with a contract, and we were the CSAR package for the whole country, Combat Search and Rescue. So we supported a lot of different organizations, and mainly it was the anti-narcotic mission is what we supported primarily, but we got pulled in different directions at different times, and that was one of them. And so it was an agency plane that was doing missions pretty high over the country to gather information for the teams that were on the ground. It was a Cessna single engine, probably a little overweight, and things happen, especially in aviation. So when I got to the crash site, this guy landed this plane in the mountains in a way that I did not think physics would support. Like it was, they're lucky anybody walked away from that plane.
Wow.
And it was 5 crew members. 2 of them were executed like shortly after they were taken. And 3 would end up being held hostage by the FARC for 5 years until a very daring Colombian rescue. Do you remember this?
Yeah. Because
it was one
5
of the
years triggered like.
There's a movie made about this, isn't there?
There should be.
I don't know if there's a
there
movie,
is,
but there
hasn't
probably should
yet.
be.
We need to knock on some doors.
Yeah, but Keith, he just popped up on a podcast. I was like, there he is. Because he used to work on our package, and he's an amazing guy. All 3 of those guys are amazing. And we were at the crash site. We had a company of Colombian Army searching the whole area, and we focused on the crash site.
So about like 100 or so Colombian, couple hundred, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So they were scouring all the ridgelines around that crash site.
Speaking of crashes, a intentional crash into the ocean is SpaceX. And that's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
You actually retrieve people from capsules?
Let me stop. How do you sign up to do astronaut recovery? Like, is that a wanted ad of like, I'll go recover astronauts? It
sounded like it's part of your duties, right?
Yes. Every time a human gets launched into the atmosphere, there's a pararescue package, and they're laced all over the world because once that thing gets off the launch pad, it's going to be 100 miles away like that. So anything and everything can happen, and we have, a contingent team out there ready to cover it. It used to be laced throughout the glide path, and it was laced all the way through Europe into Australia, and there were sites everywhere. So we've shrunk that down to a C-17 package in Hawaii with a full alert PJ team, and then one in Charleston, South Carolina, also C-17.
So I can fly
pararescue
anywhere
package
in the world it needs to.
real fast, yeah. So, and then there's a C-130 and a rotary team right there at the launch pad. SpaceX they launch all civilian crews, and the military is not responsible for it. Like they're either a NASA astronaut or they're covered down by NASA, and that allows the military to cover it, and NASA pays for it out of their budget to do that. So knowing that they're going to launch civilians, a guy named Anil Menon, who was the first SpaceX flight surgeon, he wanted to be an astronaut. And he's got this insane resume, and he's amazing. Got very experienced in emergency medicine while simultaneously staying in the Air Force as a flight surgeon. And one of his jobs was at Det-3 Human Space Flight Performance. And he worked with a really good friend of every PJ, really, especially in my age group, Brent Manny. And Brent Manny is a legend in pararescue. In fact, if there's anything historical at all, and there's a question, he's my first call. So anyways,
phone a friend.
yeah. And he had been a foundational piece, member of that team at human spaceflight. So Anil, knowing he wanted to be an astronaut, applied to NASA, and he competed. He went up against Johnny Kim. So Johnny Kim, you may or may not know him.
Harvard-educated doctor, now astronaut.
Silver Star recipient, Harvard, on and on.
We always joke that there are parents that hang his picture in the living room.
Yeah, kids.
This is what we want you to be. All of it.
Good luck. And if they would see Anil Menon's resume, it's right there. Anil's incredible. But anyways, he applied to be a NASA astronaut and didn't make it. He was like, and they were like, hey, don't worry, you'll be an alternate. He goes, I know what alternate means. How do I get to space? I still want to be an astronaut. And so he's like, he realized that SpaceX was not ready to launch billionaires into space. So he wrote a white paper and said, hey, you not only don't have a medical program, but you have no plan to recover these multi-billionaires you're about to launch into space. Here, you're welcome. I'll build both programs, medical and he did. And I was his first hire. He called Brent Manny first, actually. And Brent was like, there's no way I can do that. I can't step away from this job right now, but I appreciate it. And that fascinates me. I'd love to do it, just not right now. And he goes, well, I still need somebody to help me build the astronaut rescue and recovery team. And he goes, you got to call RJ. And so thank you, Brent Manny.
Nice.
And thank you, Anil Menon. He's done a lot. And he stood up the medical program. He stood up the astronaut rescue and recovery program, and we built it and picked resumes from the PJ career field together and built that team. And it was really cool to be part of that process and to actually recover astronauts.
So you're doing all this. I mean, we've covered so much in the military, and then SpaceX and astronaut recovery. And you're like, hey, I'm just going to work in Hollywood. How does that happen?
In all my free time.
Yeah. How do you get into Hollywood and stunt coordination and some of those things?
Yeah. Okay. So another disclaimer, I'm definitely not a stunt coordinator.
People that that's their career, that probably take offense to that. I'm using my words.
Yeah, no worries at all. And so I have been a rescue coordinator. I've been an aerial safety coordinator. That all falls under stunts. So it is close. But stunt coordinating, like you get guys like Chris O'Hara, Tom Struthers, legends like Vic Armstrong, who's done it for 60 years.
Whoa. The
first movie I just happened to be on a 6-month set of orders supporting Ranger School medically. Supported it a couple times as a 18 Delta. My first job out of PA school was to fill the gap between the two active duty. There was an underlap between the two active duty PAs. And they were like, RJ, like, Best Ranger's coming up. What do you think? And I was like, what do I need to do? And like, you just need to tell me that you'll work from late December, beginning of January through May. And because we have a gap between the physician assistants for the clinic here. And then, so you do clinic hours in the morning and then we just train for Best Ranger. And I was like, done. That sounds awesome. So you've been to Columbus, Georgia. When I went through airborne school in 87, which is, I'm dating myself, but in the 80s, 90s, like that place was a typical Army town. And it's grown and it's got beautiful and way better than it was back then. But in the spring of 2001, so this is before the planes hit the towers, there are 2 huge feature film productions in Columbus, Georgia. Ranger School was supporting We Were Soldiers with Mel Gibson, and Black Hawk Down was being supported by 3rd Ranger Battalion. So they did their train up there before they went over and filmed in Morocco. So I'm at Ranger School, and me and a really good friend of mine, Jamie Kirby, who's super tall, and I'm not tall. So there's 2 ways to go through the Darby Queen, right? And there's a kind of a average to short guy.
Ranger School obstacle course, widely known in that community, difficult.
So of all the obstacle courses in the military, there's probably about 5 that are really well known. And in the special operations community, almost everybody knows about the Darby Queen, which is this insane obstacle course down in Columbus, Georgia. So, and you go through it in Ranger School a couple times. So we take the cast and crew through there, and we kind of hit it off with a couple guys. Mel Gibson was hilarious. And Barry Pepper, ironically, who played the reporter in the movie, he was the most athletic.
He played Joe Galloway, the reporter.
He crushed that obstacle course. It was awesome. He goes, man, I put one in the backyard, but my wife would never let me do that. This is awesome. So he loved it. And it was a cool cast and crew, and they offered me a speaking part, and I was like, you know, at the time I was dating a girl out of Atlanta, Kimberly, and our friends were really good family friends. And she had a trip to Europe. So we were going to Paris. The weekend I was supposed to fly to California and read for this part. I was like, I got to go to Paris with my girlfriend.
So you could have been in We Were Soldiers.
I could have had a speaking part during the Vietnam scenes.
Kimberly.
Yeah, Kimberly. And we're still good friends, and she's awesome.
Well, that's good. At least that family.
Her dad, Pete Foley, his plane is in a museum.
Oh, wow.
And it says Foley's Follies on it. And he was a legend in the 105 like Wild Weasel crew in Vietnam.
Wow.
Like a maniac in the air. Like he was just relentless. And fearless. But anyways, that was his daughter. So we went to Paris, had a great time. That was my first glimpse into the movie industry. And after I turned that down, I was like, at least I got a peek, you know, behind the curtain. It's kind of cool. So years and years later, I'm in Pararescue. I go through the pipeline. I'm in New York. I'm still deploying with my contract job. And a buddy of mine who was a pararescue instructor calls me and said, hey, and I had just turned his resume into work. I shotgunned it to a bunch of different communities, and I hadn't heard from him in months. So he calls me out of the blue, and I was like, hey, Nick, what's going on? I haven't heard from you in a while. He goes, well, I got good news and bad news. And I was like, well, hell, man, what's the good news? He goes, I'm trying out for your place. And I was like, all right, which section? He said, mobile security. I was like, cool. Okay. Keep your sense of humor, stay healthy, keep doing your best. They're going to tell you suck every day. Just smile and keep doing your best. You'll be fine. I said, well, hell, man, what's the bad news? Are you getting a divorce over this? Like, what's going on? He goes, no. And he started laughing. He goes, no, but you have to come here and do my job. And I was like, well, what are you doing? He goes, dude, I've already got your plane ticket. Just fly out here and I'll tell you when you get here. I was like, it's Albuquerque and I am not a scientist. So there is nothing that I see. No, come out here. And it was Nick McKinley, who runs a nonprofit also called Deliver Fund, doing amazing things. But at the time, he was working on a movie. And so when he told me, I was like, Nick, you know where you're trying out? You can't be in a movie. And he goes, no. It's $1,000 a day. All you have to do is answer their stupid questions. Like, it's the director, it's Christian Bale, and you just answer their questions. That's it. You don't have to be on screen. You don't have to be in the credits. Done. I was like, why didn't you start with that? So anyways,
I would have been in Albuquerque yesterday.
Yeah. So, and I had a break in my, rotation. So I was lucky I got to go out there for a month, and I hit it off with Christian Bale, who's an amazingly focused human being and a really great guy. Everyone talks about his outbursts, and I was like, man, you were not on that film set. And they're like, what does that mean? I was like, listen to his audio again. He's the nicest guy. Nobody slept. It's 3 days, 3 nights, 3 days, 3 nights. Nobody slept. Nobody had any circadian rhythm at all. It was really bad. The second unit director lost his mind probably every third hour and screamed the worst profanities you can possibly fathom at people. And Christian Bale was on there. He was like, I can't believe you're in my shot. Like, hey, I appreciate what you do, man, but oh my God. Hey, I really, please don't do that again. You know what I mean? Like, that's how nice he is. And the other guy I met on that film was Tom Struthers. And Tom Struthers was like, he and I had a couple conversations, and he basically asked me, hey, I really enjoyed working with you. I'd love to bring you on other movies. Are you even interested? And I was like, absolutely. This is a blast.
Yeah.
I get paid about the same as, one of the agencies. It's way safer and it's more fun. You're problem solving every day. Like 100% I'm in. And so he dragged me on. The next movie he took me on was Inception, which is still one of my favorite movies. Like, I think Christopher Nolan takes a topic that he's curious about and says, what is my audience? What have I never seen before on screen? And he
dives into it. He's
one of my favorite directors. And Tom Struthers was his right-hand man for stunts for years. And he would just assemble these stunt teams based on the script and the requirements and everything. And there's a few film sets where you walk on and you're like, we're going to earn our money here. So everyone's kind of a little worried. Like on Tom Struthers film sets, like there's some high pressure, like you're on a Christopher Nolan movie. So there's some pressure here and there to get things done and get them done quickly. But he brings safety up every time. And I've never walked onto any scene, any setup where I was worried about safety ever.
And you've worked on a lot. I mean, you said Inception, like a lot of well-known big movies. I mean, right? Yeah.
Yeah, literally because of Tom. Like, and big TV shows like Jack Ryan, Tom Struthers.
But you're so humble, I have to say, RJ. I think a lot of why Tom brought you on is because you are who you are. And you've got incredible amount of knowledge. You're cool as a cucumber. I can't imagine you ever losing your crap. I'm sure it happens, everyone it does, but I just can't imagine it. So I think you should also have a little credit for why he brought you on to all this. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been it's literally some of the projects I've been on. I've kind of looked back and especially like there was a movie Dunkirk, and he brought me in because they had a multi-billionaire who owned all the Spitfire planes. There was 3 of them. They were all older pilots. The multi-billionaire,
like World War II era
World War II aircraft. Yeah. So these are all $5 million planes each.
Wow.
One of the pilots was that same multi-billionaire, and nobody had a plan to make sure if anything happened, like he would get taken care of. So he tasked me with having an aerial safety team to make sure that if that went down in the English Channel, because that's where all their shots were filmed over, we got him out quick and safely and got him to a hospital or whatever he needed really fast. So I put that plan together. He executed it and got the budget for it. And then myself and another PJ, Greg Forshaw, who crushed it, by the way, we were the 2-man safety team for those planes. So we were always in a safety helicopter right behind the camera bird. The reason why that was so dangerous is because those World War II planes were meant to fly fast. And there's not really any camera ships, whether it's a rotary or a fixed wing, that can keep up with them. So they stalled out quite a bit. Now, these are all seasoned pilots. Like Dan Freakin was the guy I'm talking about, and he's an amazing pilot. And it was Ed Shipley and Steve, and they had this maintenance crew. And it takes a lot to keep those planes in the air, especially while you're flying them, especially when those planes are meant to do what needed to happen on camera. So it was cool to just watch it, like to be like from here to that silver, like to the end of this room. And those planes are doing the most dynamic aerial stunts that planes do on camera. So
that had to be wild to see that close up.
What they accomplished on camera was so insane that they won the Taurus World Stunt Award that year for Best Specialty Stunt, those 3 pilots.
It's amazing.
So, yeah.
Are there any movie shows coming out that you've recently worked on?
The one movie that I've consulted on briefly, and I have some friends working on it, is to me personally, is a very important movie for Air Force Special Warfare. So it's Roberts Ridge. It's the John Chapman story, and it's called Alone at Dawn. And there were a couple directors that were picked to film it and a couple actors, but it kept dropping for whatever reason. And it happens in film. Sometimes they drop indefinitely, and sometimes they drop until somebody else picks it up. And Ron Howard's team picked it up.
Nice.
Yeah, they're making it. It's
Alone.
I forget his name. That's going to play
Adam
Chapman.
Driver.
Yeah, former Marine.
So the 2 primary actors, and it's an amazing cast, but the 2 primaries are Adam Driver, former Marine, amazing actor, obviously, and Anne Hathaway.
Oh, wow.
So I got to work with her on Dark Knight Rises. I haven't seen her in a very long time, but I get to have her on a shooting range for a week in Brooklyn.
I've always heard she's really lovely.
She's so nice.
Lovely.
But I'm glad they're making that story, because that's one that needs to be told. You're talking I mean, the early stages.
2002.
Yeah, 20-some years ago.
On that day, he earned it multiple times.
Yeah.
And when you see the ISR footage, like it's...
Yeah, like a one-man fight. I mean, against hundreds of Al-Qaeda, Taliban enemy, and like, dude, it's stuff movies should be made of. I mean, and you're like, no, that wouldn't happen in real life. It legitimately happened. He was like fighting until obviously he couldn't fight anymore. But like,
there's a point in the ISR footage where you see him look down the hill, and his team is trying to get out of the kill zone. They're getting shot at from 3 to 5 different directions. The team's away and safe, and he hears a helicopter that's coming to pick them up, and he has a chance to run after him. And he chooses to stay and fight because he knows that helicopter might get shot down if he doesn't do what he did.
Wow.
And that helicopter did not get shot down. Like,
that's amazing.
Sacrifice his life for
he really buddies. He was facing that way, and then all of a sudden he just turned it back on and just started laying hate.
Those that may not know, what's ISR footage?
So that's the overhead.
Yeah, your imagery from overhead. Like if you're seeing a video of war going on, like real stuff, that's the aircraft up above.
So there are people that have surveillance of what's happening, and that's the surveillance that they were able to go back and get those facts from.
Right. And some of those ISR platforms are armed and some aren't.
And some are manned, some are not manned. So there's a lot of, especially now. I mean, talking, we're 20-some years after it. Back then, they were probably mostly all manned. I think.
I heard for the Baghdadi raid there was 50 aircraft in the air. 50.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, that's all.
Anyways, I digress. Yeah. But that project is happening right now, and they're going to try and capture the Ridgeline scene before the holidays, which they can do. I meet a lot of cool people in the movie industry, and one of them is Patrick Nowell. So he's been the producer on Extraction 2 that I was very fortunate to work on, and then also for Alone at Dawn and for Eden. That was the last movie I did, also Ron Howard. And I got paid to go to the Galapagos and film all these insane...
Terrible.
Oh, it was horrible. It was brutal. Brutal. Like, send me back to the agency. No, it was amazing. It was... and again, it was a Ron Howard movie, so he is very attention to detail, and he's awesome. But Patrick Nowell, I've told him this multiple times. I was like, Patrick, you can tell he gives a shit about his people. Mm-hmm. He takes care of everybody, literally everybody, and he gets it done. So he's got his eye on the mission and the crew, and he takes care of everybody. And I said, Patrick, I wish I had commanders like you in the military. I wish. Like, he's that good. He's one of those guys.
Yeah.
But he's overseeing all of it. And I was like, hey, Patrick, what mountain are you going to do this on? He goes, oh, no, we're not leaving that to chance. We built it in a quarry. It's exact specifications. Like, this is going to be precise. This will be the terrain that event happened on. And I was like, that's awesome. So I'm really excited to see it.
And that'll probably come out in 2026, 2027.
So they'll most likely they'll finish production sometime in the spring.
Yeah.
Early spring to mid, maybe. I can't imagine they're going to go past it. And then usually it's about a year for post-production.
Yeah, so it'll be 2027. What's the name
and there's
of
going to
it
be a
again?
lot of visual and special effects.
What's the name of it again?
Alone at Dawn.
Alone at Dawn. It's Neil Roberts, right?
I think if you look it up on IMDb, it's still called Combat Control.
Yeah.
But it's based on the Dan Schilling book, who Dan Schilling was in 19th Group. Yeah. Little known fact. But he was a former CCT. Great guy. But definitely read his book, Alone at Dawn. He wrote it with John Chapman's widow. And it's an amazing book. And I've heard the script's awesome. So I'm in the process of reading it right now.
I mean, we haven't covered enough exciting stuff between Hollywood and...
I was going to say, how in the world did you get to Brigands? You launched Brigands. So was this, you were out on the movie sets and you're like, I need something more comfortable, more flexible. How did you decide to launch Brigands?
Also, full disclosure, so there are two brothers from Texas, the Curtis brothers. So Connor and Dylan Curtis. So they grew up in a small Texas town around Fort Worth, joined the Army. They were both in 1st Ranger Battalion. They crushed it. They did one pump. Then they got out to go to college, and they both ended up in the fire department. So their dad, who's also awesome, like their whole family is really cool. And I've met his parents. They come out to New Smyrna Beach where we all live. And I've met him a couple of times. But those two brothers kind of started it in 2015 while they were at 1st Ranger Battalion. And they started it as a T-shirt for their punk band. They like Brigands Co. So the Abrams Charter, and basically it's a small paragraph that outlines what 1st Ranger Battalion is going to be. So what it was going to be, what his vision was, is there's going to be a battalion that's going to be an example for all infantry, and they're going to set the standard at all times. And there shall be no hooligans or brigands in their ranks. If I find them, basically he was inferring, I will disband them.
Okay.
So, and in the military, with our dark sense of humor, hooligans actually is a term from the northeast of the United States that came out in the early 1900s.
I think I've been called a hooligan before when I was younger.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's not hooligans. It's hoodlums.
I've definitely been called a hoodlum when I was younger.
Hoodlum. So we all know what a hoodlum is. Brigands is a far, like most people have never heard that unless they watched Pirates of the Caribbean, or it's a very old term from the 1400s. And if you look it up, the first definition you'll read is group of thieves. And what it was is from the 1400s, like there was a lot of like lords and, royalty that would gather groups of guys and say, I'm going to pay you, go attack my neighbor and make sure he never steps foot and never steals from me again. And so they would go over there and pummel them, and, that'd be it. And they'd come back. Well, they didn't always get paid on time. And some guys, they actually just did that as a profession. There was a lot of work around England and around Europe, actually, where royalty would pay mercenaries basically to take care of business. And so the more creative ones would get, they were like, we still got to feed our families. So they would go out and do whatever it took. And every once in a while, one of them would get caught. So that's where the term came from. But fast forward to 1st Ranger Battalion, Brigands is a term also with affection that basically means, look, you probably don't want this guy in an open ranks inspection, but in case of war, this is the first guy that you will bring on. Yeah. He's one of the best brigands. Whoever he wants to bring, whoever he picks, just grab that whole crew and make sure they're out front because they're going to crush it. So that's kind of where the term came from. That's such an
awesome backstory.
Yeah. The reason why they started was that initial reason I told you, but when they both moved to New Smyrna Beach and became firemen, I saw the shirt and I was like, I want one of those. And they were like, well, it's, we're kind of waiting. And I said, okay. And they started telling me what the shirt was about. And it was service before self and always exceed the standard. And if you're walking across the, 1st Ranger Battalion area and you see a piece of trash, you don't walk, you keep walking until like, this place is a wreck. Like, this place sucks. No, you're the guy who picks up the trash. And like, so that's kind of like, you're the example for the team. And so the more I heard about it, I was like, that's really cool, man. Like, you need to do something with this. And I'm like, yeah, once we become firemen and we're on a regular schedule, 1 day on, 2 days off, we'll pick it up again. So they got on their regular schedule. I was like, all right, what's up? And they didn't have a business license. They didn't really have a plan. And I said, how about if I help you guys make this an actual company? And let's do something with this because your message is amazing. And I need to hear it every day. I know my friends would love it. And the history behind this whole thing is, to me, it sounds super iconic and we could do some great things with this. And so as we were in the bank to get a business account, Tom Hardy calls me, who's an actor, and his producing partner, Dean Baker, they both call me and they talk about creating a movie that had a script. They were in early development and it was The Things They Carried, which if you're in American high school, when I was growing up, you had to read that book. If you went to infantry officer basic course, you had to read that book. If you were a special forces officer, which that was my first MOS in special forces, you had to read that book. So, and it's an amazing story. So they were going to create that. And so immediately after a couple minutes, I realized there's going to be a Rat Pack kind of style team, a squad. And all the young actors they named are up and coming actors. So they were about to just really blow up. And then Tom Hardy was going to be the older actor that kind of mentors them through the whole process. So I was like, okay, pre-production. And then they talked about creating a boot camp like Platoon had with Dale Dye. And they sent me a link and I watched it later. And I told him, I was like, look, I'm not going to be an asshole. This training is going to kick all their asses. And they're going to form an insanely tight team and you're going to love it. And we're going to do it. And I realized to execute that, I needed somebody to mentor each one of these actors. And oh, by the way, we go into production for all the rehearsals right before they shoot it, and for those actors to continue to ask questions. And then my guys from the military advisory team can be background, deep background, whatever they wanted. But those guys don't need training and they won't be extras. They're going to be awesome. So I walked back into the bank and I was like, hey guys, let's do this. Like, let's have a consulting company. Let's get veterans jobs. Let's I'd love to get some of the guys, like all your friends are special operations and or paramedic or above. Like, let's get them over to SpaceX. Let's get them on movies. Let's do what we can for the community. And like, it won't just be a t-shirt company. And so we do stuff like beach cleanups and create community. And Dylan Curtis is, like Connor had to go. He ended up getting married and he got pretty deep in DeLand Fire Department. So he stepped away. And so Dylan and I remained, and Dylan is the heart and soul of that company. I love it. Awesome.
I learned here because I knew some of that, but I didn't know all that. And I love just that mission behind it and that community and doing stuff. Subscribe to hear more great stories from great people like RJ and our featured guests. So hit that subscribe button.
I love that you brought up the fire department reference there because it's actually fascinating. One of the ways that her got linked up with fire department coffee is just there's a commonality of a lot of people that get out of the military and they're missing that feeling of having, the community. It's interesting how many people actually find themselves going that pathway after they get out of the military. So just interesting that you brought that up.
It's been interesting because people talk about transitioning, especially on the show, and mental health and a lot of things. And I think a lot of veterans specifically, and probably veterans from other communities, first responder, like the things they see every day. Yeah. I can't even imagine.
And they go home that night.
Right. Yeah. And tuck their kids in and then wake up and rinse and repeat. Like, they're amazing. I've put a lot of things off. And so just recently in the last 2 years.
It sounds like it. It sounds like you've been slacking terribly, I just have to say.
Well, I've maybe there's a subconscious part of me that stays busy so I don't have to deal with things and unpack things. So I'm sure there's a little bit of that going on. But in the last 2 years, I've been in a position to where I could spend more time with my kids and I could think about things. And it always hasn't been positive thoughts. So I've started to say, all these programs I hear about, NICO, like the National Intrepid Center of Excellence right here in Bethesda, Maryland. Mm-hmm. They have a brand new building right next to Walter Reed, and it is awesome. And somebody extremely close to me is in college right now for art therapy. So that's art and being creative. And then it's almost a dual degree with psychology. And she said, hey, I want to work with veterans and I want to work with their dependents. And I was like, well, NICO's right down the road. When you come home for Christmas, let's go over. Like, I know they have a art therapy program. So I reached out to Adrienne Stamper, who's the art therapist there. She has an art studio, and that's part of one of the components in that month-long program. And she came in on her day off and spent like 3 hours with us. And she was amazing. But walking into that room was crazy powerful. And I could go on and on about that room alone. But also I did a 3-day TBI screening, not program. So most of the TBI programs are 3 to 4 weeks inpatient. But this one's a screening where they kind of throw you under the microscope and say, hey, quick glimpse. We're going to hit you from a lot of different medical specialties. And Samuel Rodriguez, he's an old Special Forces he's not old, but he was my old special forces. Yeah. He was one of my former special forces instructors, and I cross trained as a medic in 96, 97. That was the first year that it was an all Fort Bragg 18 Delta course. So we were the first class.
Where the Special Forces Medic course was all there.
Yeah, brand new building, brand new complex, which now it's not brand new. But Sammy Rodriguez, basically, he's one of the veteran liaisons there. And there's a small group from my era of going through the 18 Delta program that he's kept in touch with. And he's really big in SOMA, so Special Operations Medical Association. Sammy's awesome. And I can't say enough about him, but he basically dragged me into that program because you need to apply. And so I was like, okay, but if I apply and they don't, he goes, you'll be fine. Like you've been on jump status since 87. Like you'll just fill it out.
You'll qualify.
I'm sure there's something wrong with your brain.
Yeah. That's what he was saying.
Sammy.
I've known you for years and you're just not right in the head. So anyways, I go there and I get thrown on the microscope and I'm hit from all angles, everywhere from physical therapy to neurosurgery. Like it's a really comprehensive program. And one of them was art therapy, but that was my first time. And again, I don't know if it was a subconscious move to say, I think you need help from a lot of different angles. Weeks previous to that, I went over to Scotland for a 60-mile race. Well, it's supposed to be a 54-mile race, but I'll never talk enough about the handful of guys that really, like I said, showed me what healthy looked like. Robert Irvine. And because of him, 65, American veterans went over to Scotland. And if they had any sense of, like, if they got even half of what I got out of it, like you said, he's touching and saving lives. Like he's amazing. SEAC is Senior Enlisted Advisor.
Basically, head enlisted guy, the whole military.
Right. He is a guy that is so busy and he's getting pulled in 1,000 different directions and he will stop dead in his tracks and help anybody. I don't think people talk about when you help somebody, they're like, oh, you're helping so many people. Honestly, I don't know who gets more out of it, the person helping that person or the person who's getting helped. And nobody talks about how good that feels, how amazing that gives you this sense of, success, accomplishment, and you're helping somebody else, not yourself.
That feeling can't be bought.
No. The other one was Dave Reed, who you guys may or may not know. He's at Terra Arma. His partner there is Christian. They're both doing amazing things to help the military with what they actually wear on their body. So I'm going on this 60-mile adventure because the guy who set up the race, when my two SAS buddies are like, be careful because the guy who sets that up, he's not right in the head. Like he's insane.
And if they're saying that.
Yeah, they're saying that, it's true. They were like, don't trust him. And so I didn't really say, define that. What does that mean? What I thought it meant was he's going to take you through the most gnarly terrain in Scotland. You're going to be soaking wet the whole time. It's going to suck. You're going to be uphill or downhill. No in between. He's going to find the worst part of Scotland and walk you through it. And that was true. But then you get to mile 54 and there is not a finish line in sight. You're told it's 54 miles. Everyone's GPS. They have all these signs. It's hard to get lost. It's an extremely well-run race. There's big stations every 7 miles. There's little stations between those. They were all over safety. It was amazing. You get to 54, crickets. There's we're here at the finish line. We're like, no, we're not. There's still more signs. And right then it clicked. I was like, this satanic world. Like, oh my God, this is what they meant. Like, you're not done. And so I was like, guys, I want you to, and they started cussing. So they were.
Oh yeah.
We heard about it.
Dude,
you can imagine.
At that point, it's every bad word you can think of and some that are made up.
Yeah.
On whoever designed this. And you're going to kill them. Yeah.
So literally the two guys I ended up with, one was Robert Irvine's trainer, a former CCT 2-4 guy. He was 60 years old. And I literally just turned 58. So I was 57 when we ran this summer. So he looks like a rock star. Like he took his shirt off So you were like, damn, dude. Like, and he does ultra marathons in the past. I don't think he had done one recently because he was saying, I wish I would have trained more. He crushed it. He was awesome. And we just had a blast. We kind of laughed our way through it. We met a lot of people. That's one of the cool things about that race. You're meeting all these veterans from everywhere, from the UK, from Georgia, from the Ukraine, from the Scandinavian countries. Like all of NATO kind of shows up.
That's awesome.
And they all know it's, and they're all there to raise money for their veteran nonprofits. So it's a big, huge race. And it's just a beautiful country. Like you're walking along and you just think you're in Lord of the Rings the whole time. Like you're on a movie set. It was amazing. And it's all because of Robert Irvine and his team, CZ, Dave, like the whole gang, all, headed up by Robert Irvine. I can't speak enough about that. That actually started my journey. And I felt a lot better leaving there to go to that TBI screening. And I also signed up for, with the Cohen Veteran Trauma Therapy group out of Tampa. I signed up for their 12-week intensive program, and I'm a couple weeks into that. It's all very amazing. And the more you go down those trails, the more you realize I should have probably done this years ago.
And then boom, you're founding with other members, Four Branches Bourbon. What?
I was working on Extraction 2, so I'm in Prague. I just happen to be in my apartment, and I get a text, and it's from an old friend, GC Wine, who's an Air Force veteran. He ended up becoming one of the best medical instructors that I ever had, because there's very sensitive medical training that the military does. So that comes with a lot of oversight and everything. So GC Wine handled all of our card issuing things. So for a paramedic refresher, you have to have the hours for a paramedic refresher that qualifies for that every couple of years. You have to have ACLS. You have to have, all these other medical cards to turn in with those CMEs or continuing medical education hours. He was one of those instructors that kept you laughing and interested. Like, GC's awesome. But I get a text from him out of the blue, and I hadn't heard from him in months. And he's like, RJ, whatever you do. And then I start reading his text, and he just calls me. He goes, hey man, I don't have time. You're about to get a call from an unknown number. It's not in your phone. Answer it and say yes to whatever they say. And I was like, GC, what, are you drunk? No, God, he started cussing as GC does. And he goes, no, really, seriously. And I was like, what does this have to do? What is this about? He goes, it's about a whiskey company. I was like, a whiskey company, click. And I'm like, and I'm looking at the phone like, he is out of his mind. And the phone rings. And it's my three partners from Four Branches Bourbon now. But at the time, it was these three guys. And so it starts with, hey, I'm Rick Franco, and then Mike Trott, and then Harold Underdown. And they were all calling me, I want to say from the Bahamas in Baker's Bay, which is a very high-end resort that they were all doing security for at the time. And they're like, we're starting a bourbon company, and each one of us is from a different branch of the military, and we don't have an Army guy. And I said, okay, well, just so you know, and they were like, GC speaks very highly of you. And two of us have heard of you from, your contracting work, but we thought you were a PJ. And I said, well, I am a PJ. And he goes, yeah, GC said you started Special Forces. Like we didn't know that. And I said, yeah. And I said, but listen, guys, I've never been active duty, organically. I was never in the active duty Army. I've been in 19th Group for over 15 years, and I've had a blast, and I've been on loan to active duty, but never active duty. And they're like, have you deployed with the military? I was like, yeah. And they were like, and you've deployed with our place, because two of the guys work as contractors as well. And I said, yeah. And they're like, if anybody has a problem with your resume, then they can, whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, just wanted to make sure that was out there, because I don't want you guys to catch hell for it, but I'm very interested. Because we asked each other a lot of questions. First of all, why bourbon? Because in our community, it's Scotch or bourbon. Like for contracting world, it's Scotch or bourbon, or sometimes both. And I always did lean bourbon because I just liked it better, not knowing why. And they were like, bourbon is the most American spirit on the planet. Like nothing screams America like bourbon. And I was like, okay, now I know why I lean bourbon all the time. And they were saying, and the other thing is we just want to honor those that maybe didn't make it home or, worked in the same spaces we did overseas in some of those ungodly places or garden spots or whatever. And we just want to honor them. And we started with a barrel of bourbon, but now we understand it just has to be more and we have to do better. And I was like, after a couple of phone calls and video conferences, I was like, guys, I'm in. Like, what's the buy-in? How do we do this? What's next? So that's how it started. Honestly, they're companies that, unless they're giving back or helping, I'm not going to be involved with them. And I think all my founders feel that way. Like, whatever the company, whether it's Brigands Go or Four Branches Bourbon, some of the nonprofits, everyone's there to help everyone around them in their communities. And one of the things we debated, man, with all the, self-medication and veteran suicide, there's first responders, the NFL, and everybody in between. We're not the only community, but obviously it's those stats are out there for the world to see. Our veteran population is suffering and it's not good. Each one of us should individually decide if this is the right thing that the four of us can do. Let's get on a call tomorrow, but get a good night's sleep. Let's talk tomorrow. As a group, as Four Branches Bourbon, we're like, you know what? It's not a fine line. It's an important decision that guys make, men and women make, and they either drink too much or they don't. So how do we change the narrative and say alcohol's not a bad thing? We're not going to stop it for sure. Everyone drinks, and some people don't. So
I don't.
Yeah, no, exactly. And so you, like Tom Hardy and other friends that work at a very high level in their respective industries, they don't drink and they're still welcome to our fireside chats. They're still part of our crowd. Like, I'm very careful around alcohol because in my 20s, I grew up in the Army where if you didn't have a DUI, nobody trusted you.
Yeah,
you had to be at least pulled over. That's the 80s.
Yeah.
Until the first, Iraq invasion in 91, that's when everything changed. Like, you will not have an alcohol related incident or you're out. Like, literally, my 2-star general in West Virginia, he grew up enlisted in 19th Special Forces as an 18 Bravo weapons man. And he became a 2-star general. He had 6 DUI convictions.
Wow.
I remember I was just let out of jail. It was a DUI, alcohol related incident. I called back to my unit and it was Saturday morning. I think I was in a DLI. And so, and the
so you were doing language training?
Yeah. So Defense Language Institute, sorry. Yeah, I was there for Spanish. A 2-star general stood up on day one and said, if you have an alcohol related incident, I will make it my business to personally make sure you are out of the military. So that was not good. So I call up and I call Tom Workman, he kept our unit together. He was like, he took care of everybody and he took care of me for years. And it was Saturday and I didn't think anyone would pick up, but it was a drill weekend. So everybody was in there. And so I was like, Tom, I am in so much trouble. Oh my God, this just happened. I'm so screwed. And he started laughing. He goes, hold on a second. I'm in a battalion training meeting. Hey guys, RJ just popped his cherry.
Yeah.
And everyone started cheering.
Oh my gosh.
I thought my life was over.
Wow.
So, and I'm like, what is going on? He goes, nobody can touch you. And I said, a 2-star general is going to hang you from a yardarm tomorrow when he finds out what just happened last night. I got pulled over for DUI. And he goes, what'd you blow? And I said, 0.08. And he goes, that's not a DUI. And I said, it is in California. They just changed it. And he goes, whatever. And he goes, nobody can touch you. He can give you a letter of reprimand. That's it. You're in the Guard. Only General Tackett can do anything to you. You belong to West Virginia. Well,
in West Virginia, I think the legal limit's like 0.23.
God knows what it was, really. Alcohol is a big thing. I remember guys in my unit going, drink. And they would call me all sorts of names until I drank a lot. And I was a lightweight, man. I probably weighed 150 pounds most of my career. So 3 to 4, and I'm damn near blacked out. So anyways, I know alcohol is, if you don't watch it, it's gonna put you in really bad position. So anyways, all four of us had our own experience with alcohol. And so we're like, yeah, you're right. We got to do something. So the next day we all get back on the phone. They're like, nope, we're going to go forward. We're going to change the narrative. And we came up with a couple different ways to do it. And what we settled on was at the top of every one of our bottles right here.
Yeah.
Shazam, because I brought this for you. It says drink honorably. On the back, it says serve honorably. At the top, because we served honorably, we want to serve you our bourbon honorably. And everyone serves their community. You don't have to be a veteran to drink this.
Exactly, yeah.
In fact, this bottle does not scream, we just got back from combat, drink our bourbon. It's very subtle. And I'll get into some symbology there, but at the top, it says drink honorably. And to us, we just want everyone to stop drinking and forget, except to remember. And
stop drinking to forget, but sip to remember. I love that.
Yeah. And so when we say that, like, we give a lot of crap to our managing partner right now, and it's about to switch from Mike Trott to Rick Franco. But Mike, he has a gift. He makes people cry all the time because we all know the person that drinks too much, and we know why they drink a lot of times. Sometimes we don't. But as far as being subtle, we love our four. We can't help it because it has all of us there. So that foundational piece right there, that represents the Army, because that was the first branch. Up the middle, like the mast of a ship or a sail of a submarine, and coming out of the waters like the Navy. If you ask Rick Franco, in the middle, leanest and meanest, like a bayonet or a sword, is the Marine Corps and part of the Navy. And then coming up, dominating the sky over everybody, is the Air Force. And then even more subtle in the center is that tip of the spear, and that represents special operations. So Harold was a Navy SEAL, 30 years, like retired command master chief. I was obviously in special forces, and the guys were at the agency. They were both in the CIA, but that tip of the spear, you can see half the tip, and that represents those still out doing the business and protecting all of us. And the half you can't see represent our fallen that are no longer with us.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is how you brand.
Wow.
That is a branding lesson 101. I have to go even further and say, when I see the swoop that you said represents the Air Force, it reminds me of an America that's cloaked in the American flag, and I don't know why. There's nothing that really says that, but it gives me that impression. Also, when I think about Four Branches, the first time I saw it, before I even knew that you had any association with it, I actually assumed that branches were from what they were using in the process of the bourbon making, or thinking about the barrel itself.
Like I said, over the last couple of years, I've kind of put myself under a microscope to see what I could do. I didn't feel like I was at my baseline, and I certainly didn't feel like I was reaching my potential every day. But there's so many nonprofits out there helping. And so now I'm at, so there's an organization called Project One Veteran at a Time. Command Chief, retired CCT, Bill Markham. He's one of the top 3 in that organization. And Mike Trott, our managing partner right now, was former Air Force, and they served together in security forces before he went and tried out to become a CCT and finished his career that way at the 2-4. He's awesome. Like, we know a lot of the same guys. But he was like, RJ, we're going to take care of you. Like, no more worrying about that. Like, our organization, it costs you 0 money because you're a veteran. We have medical providers that are going to make sure your paperwork's perfect before it goes before anything VA. And then we stay on top of it after that. We have lawyers. You're not paying for any of it. It's always going to be 0 for you. We have lawyers that are going to fight the good fight to make sure our people are taken care of. And it's one by one, and you're one of them now. Literally, the guy who's taking care of the medical side of my situation is Scott Zastro. He did an entire career in the Army, retired, worked for the Veteran Administration, and really got to know that system well. So he's like a double threat in the best possible way on my behalf, because they are a really good filter for somebody who, doesn't speak VA to somebody who absolutely will articulate it correctly for the VA. One of the things that Four Branches got involved with was a documentary, very short documentary. There was a guy named Tim Crockett, former SBS from the UK, so Special Boat Service. He watched a couple friends do the unthinkable, And it came down to a very good friend doing it. And he was like, this is ridiculous. I have to do something. So he chose us to shine a light on mental health and the veteran suicide thing that was happening in the UK as well as the US and other places. That's not the only two countries with these problems, but he rowed across the Atlantic, solo rowboat. And then we supported, this summer, he wanted to do it again. He just didn't think he was doing enough, which is insane, but that's a whole nother topic. And it's funny because Christopher Nolan's new movie is The Odyssey. That symbolic journey that he made, one guy in a rowboat. Imagine that. The film is going to be called Tame the Kraken. Our managing partner, so Rick Franco was the first connection to Tim. He asked for support. We're like, brother, we got you. And they were personal friends. Mike Trott just came back from Cannes Film Festival, and they were screening different things. And it wasn't the film festival. Film festival is the meeting before to talk about what a branding film is, because that's a new category this year at that film festival. So he was there with the producer, Heidi, and they had a preview for the movie. It's still in post-production right now. But we had a fireside chat with Tim after the journey, and family was a big part of it. But I was like, Tim, like, The Odyssey is about a guy who just finished 10 years of combat, and then he's trying to make it home, and it takes him a decade. Like, I'm just projecting that whole scenario onto you rowing a boat for 48 plus days, and you're getting this insane, like, crazy Pacific weather, and you and your son, it was him and his son this time. It wasn't a solo trip, but it was in a very small boat, and it was all rowing power.
Yeah.
It was insane. Great. And so he has got to help his son, and his son's got to face a lot of things. And of course, Tim's facing his own demons, and he's trying to shine a light to help his entire community. Like, it's a pretty epic journey, and it's all captured in this documentary. And I'm so proud of everybody on that production team, and especially literally Tim and his family to open up like they did. To tell those stories. The veterans that get out from special operations and from the military and go help the movie industry get it right. I think veterans underestimate what they bring to the table. I think just the attitude alone coming out of the military, like, there's no job in a civilian place where you're a soldier with a high school education and you're put in charge of millions of dollar equipment, and you're in charge of like 4 or 5 people. And whatever you do dictates whether they live or die. That's a lot of responsibility. And that's like one of the first jobs after being a soldier. You're a team leader. So I think a lot of veterans just don't understand what they bring and to what industries they can bring that to. And movies one of them. And when you're talking about The Terminalist and a guy like Jared Shaw, who's the reason why The Terminalist is even on screen, he was the guy who gave the Jack Carr book, the first Terminalist, before it was even out on the market, to Chris Pratt.
Wow.
And those 3 are now executive producers of that entire franchise, and they're killing it. They're really telling stories and capturing kids' imagination. Like, the only reason I'm in Special Forces is because I saw a commercial. That's it.
Amazing.
And that commercial led me to a conversation with a recruiter. And I hadn't even hit puberty yet. So there's like, now, son, how old are you? You know, and he gave me a book list, and those books led to special operations books to tell me exactly the history of the Green Berets and then what they do. And those books led me to agency books, that contracting, all the special projects and all the weird part of that intelligence community. And those books led me to movies that showed that, from Rambo to, everything after that. So it's really interesting how when you walk into that space and you get everything accurate, like, as a military advisor, Jared affects the script, what guys are saying on camera. He's affecting what they wear. He's affecting the action they take, the exact dynamics of what's happening in those scenes. They bring the family element into it. Like, it's a really, really cool way to transition into an incredible industry. I'm working with this film festival. It's the Round Top Film Festival. It's a brand new film festival in Texas. And Rob and Shanna, husband and wife team, they're the founders along with their daughter. Skylar. But between the three of them and his family, they really wanted to honor stunts. And he was very adamant about getting stunts in the Academy Awards. So while I was helping him get ready for their first one last Veterans Day timeframe, this will be their second year. And obviously this summer it was announced. And we're actually honoring Chris O'Hare with a Maverick Stunt Award. But one of the things the other thing that he wanted to honor too was veterans. And he goes, how do you do that? I said, well, there's actually a lot of veterans and a lot of cool people in the veteran entertainment space. Why don't we have a panel, like a Q&A, and people at this film festival see what veterans bring to the industry? And then let's have a Veterans Award. There's nothing like that. And I said, unless you're like the American Legion, they honor veterans, and they have a Veterans in Film like award ceremony, and it's all veterans. But as far as a film festival, Sundance Con, nobody has a veteran award, Veterans in Film Award. And we're giving out the first one. It's literally the Brigands Veteran in Film Award.
Oh,
awesome.
So yeah, I'm really excited about a lot of different things. And I think most veterans do not like to be in the spotlight. I've talked about a lot of people on this podcast. I hate talking about myself. I'll talk about different things that led to amazing people. I literally remember at SFOT, which is now SFAS, or Special Forces Assessment Selection, like an instructor saying, pick that up and walk that way until we tell you to stop.
Yep.
And I remember looking at this log that was definitely bigger than me. And I was like, I'm already carrying 60 pounds. I don't know that I can even pick that up. But now you're on and you're overseas and you're doing these incredible things with these incredible cultures and other countries. And it's been an amazing adventure. So it's really cool.
It's one hell of a ride. Our last question.
Sure.
What do you value most in life?
That's a complicated question. I know it's different for everybody. And the first thing that popped in my head, there's probably 10 that were like right on top of each other. But the first one was my family and friends. I wouldn't be anywhere without them. They mean the world to me.
We appreciate it, buddy. We appreciate having you on. You being willing to open up, and we love it, man. I truly do believe that Dos Equis guy could pound sand. You are the most interesting man in the world.
I know I told you this before, but this bottle was actually jumped into the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Whoa.
All 4 founders signed it, and I want to give it to you guys. And
it's incredible.
You can drink it. You can sign the other side from your organization and send a message and have it auctioned off to help a nonprofit or whatever you guys want to do.
We definitely are not drinking that.
That is incredible.
Yeah, right. When he told me earlier this was jumped in on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, I was like, you got kidding. We're going to find a way to do some good with this.
Absolutely.
To get people to not drink to forget, but sip to remember.
Love it.
And we're gonna find a way to raise some money for a good cause for that.
Nice.
I appreciate it, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you're doing. And you're right. This is very therapeutic and cathartic. And you guys are reaching crowds and letting them know they're not alone. And it's amazing.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Subscribe, like, and comment. And don't forget to set those notifications. We'll see you next week with another special guest.
Until then, own your journey.